answer your first question, how much it costs for family for one-on-one care, the common rates for a live-in in Chicago metropolitan area are around $300 per day, times 30-some days in a month is about $9,000 a month and $110,000 to $120,000 a year. And then if it's 12 or 24-hour care, when you really need care 24 hours, it can easily be $500 to $600 a day in terms of the cost. And the pricing for this is priced similar to the lower end of assisted living buildings, which are typically $5,000 to $8,000 a month. That includes all the meals and all the things, but all the things that we have in the house, so it's not a spa like a massage and stuff. It's really a common bathing area because it's not safe to have showers for seniors and individuals. But there wouldn't be add-on charges. The meals are all included. A lot of times in senior buildings, people are surprised. They go in for a base rate of $6,000 because their loved one needs extra care and whatever it is. All of a sudden they pay $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. That's not our model.
So it's $9,000 for a normal one-on-one sort of scenario, and in your pricing, you're expecting to be between $5,000 to $8,000.
5 to 7 would probably be the range. We expect to set the pricing yet, but that would be the expectation here.
I don't know if my microphone wants to go on.
No,
It's on, okay. When you first approached the village, the number that you presented to us was, I believe, 11 people. And then you said possibly 12, and now it's gone up to 13. I read back on some of my old documents that said 11 to 12 is the maximum. Why would the village want to increase the number of people that you can bring in?
Well, that would apply to why more than 6 or 10, whatever the other number is. So when we talked to you all a month ago or so, I think our overhead said 11 to 12.
Correct.
Our plan was 12. We added one extra person just in case there were couples that were staying there. They have a little bit of flexibility. The model we have is really 12 residents. So we asked for 13 because it was well under the 16 allowed by the state. And it's more as a safety measure just in case there's more than one couple that stay.
And what level of examination/enforcement will the village have to control what's going on in your facility? Will we have access?
Yeah, you would probably be better to answer that than I would, because I'm not sure what the answer is to that.
the village doesn't really regulate the standards under which they operate as a state.
That seems like number.
Well, the village if the village approves a waiver, it does so by ordinance, and just as with the special use, the ordinance would include conditions. So one of the conditions were, with respect to parking, or how much parking, we would state that in the ordinance.
Yeah, I'm not, maybe you say something,
No, I wasn't sure. Maybe I misinterpreted your question, but we're going to be licensed by the Illinois Department of Public Health, and they're the ones that will inspect us.
And
They'll come in unannounced and inspect to make sure.
They will license you. They will license you then for 13.
They do not, they allow up to 16 here.
But we don't.
Right.
No,
So
I'm just saying, no, they don't regulate or survey the number of residents.
Okay.
That is determined by the local authorities.
Some villages suggest that people, even though they have a state license, would also have a village license. The village license, as we do with some of the other businesses, could allow us to have the right to conduct an inspection for, say, a census count. Probably wouldn't have any objection to that.
No.
That answers the question, thank you.
And same thing with the fire department or any other local, folks that should be involved.
Anybody else? Yeah, you mentioned, You mentioned keypad access. Duffy is a pretty busy street, and I'm concerned that people could get out potentially in the traffic. You're going to have some outdoor areas. I mean, how will that be controlled? Keypad access to get in, how about to get out?
Well, same thing to get out. So it would be keypad access in and out. It's common in many senior buildings or that way, where depending on the senior building, how they're configured. If folks were outside, like in the backyard, and there's a patio there currently, which will probably improve, we would have someone out there with them. And, we like the fact that this property is set back from Duffy by whatever, 100 yards or whatever the number of feet is. I don't know what it is offhand, a couple hundred feet, I think. But that isn't the safety margin we're looking for. We also don't want to put up fences all around the property that, that create all sorts of other issues and questions. So it would be, residents would not be able to leave the home unless they were with a caregiver or family member. And we wouldn't, those numbers would change on a weekly or daily basis, whatever necessary. I mean, we have, not only fiduciary, we have the legal obligation to malpractice to take good care of people. So that's what we do in our home care business too. I mean, we're the ones as the owner and operator of the business that are at risk if someone has if it's a safety issue. I mean, we can be sued, all sorts of things. So we need to make sure that people are well taken care of.
Our ordinance allows three unrelated people it's a definition of family for a group home. You're talking about 12 to 13 people.
Mm-hmm.
We have to make a reasonable accommodation under the law, but why do you need so many people? What would happen if we agreed to 6 people?
Well, it would not be feasible economically. It wouldn't matter if they're not for profit or otherwise. It would be, with the amount of investment and the staffing needs to take good care of people, it's just not economically feasible. So the short answer would be more than willing to share with anybody on the board the financial model that we have to show that. We're not doing more residents because we want to have more income and more profit. It's really to there are requirements on the loans as well that you have a certain amount of cash flow and safety and cushion and reserves. And it's, with the cost of real estate, the level of investment we're putting in, it's just not, sure.
So when would that be available for us to see?
It's available anytime you want. I don't plan on showing it tonight, but we could sit down with anyone on the board or some group that you want to designate to show you.
Okay, and I guess my other question is, you speak about financial, and I'm sorry. You said that your financial outlay would be somewhere around $2 million.
1.6 to 2 million we think total. And the range is just because we haven't finalized everything.
Oh, so the 900,000 that you represented tonight and the last time, you don't feel that's the high number? You said 800,000 to 900,000, 600,000 for a house. That's asking price, which I'm sure that's not what you pay. So
It is what our current offer is.
okay, fine. So that's $1.5 million. So we think it's just going to be a little over that. Yeah, to the SBA is just one question.
Yep.
Is your intention to borrow the entire amount?
No, they don't allow that, so we'd be putting in capital, their capital, so the additional money, by the way, that 800,000 or 900,000 is construction renovation. It doesn't include landscaping improvements, furniture for the house. It doesn't include initial capital needed, so you have cash to start, to pay people. So that all adds up to another 100,000 to 200,000. The SBA loan requirements, I think the most we could borrow, if it would get approved, would be 90% of the purchase price plus improvements. And then the rest, it would be, equity that we put in.
All right, so we'll make arrangements to see that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes,
So your model is 12 or 13, but I assume you could run a perfectly beautiful home with 6 people if you tone down your plan, which is...
We would love to run a beautiful home for 6 people because it would be easier to improve and improve. with the cost of real estate and reconfiguring the home to make it work well, it doesn't work. There are folks in other communities in the far northwest, in the area of Chicago, and other parts of the country that are taking, 1,800 square foot homes and putting 6 to 8 seniors in there. Most of the time, they're 2 per bedroom. It doesn't, it just doesn't work. I mean, it just doesn't work. And it also doesn't allow the staffing and activities that we'd like to have in terms of supporting the seniors. You only have one caregiver there, which, at any given time may not be enough. You'd like to have 2 during the day. You just can't afford to do the kind of things you'd like to do with meals and other programs for entertainment. It doesn't allow you to have the type of home that we would like to have, that everyone is proud of, the community and
Your materials talk about establishing a pod of the 3 homes
Mhm.
in the area. Right. Have you looked into the other 2 yet?
Yeah, we've probably looked at 80 to 100 properties, both listings and actual properties. There's another one we're in right now. The pod, by the way, is defined by the state, where they allow one common manager across 3 group homes within a 30-minute drive. So it's not like a cul-de-sac pod. It's I can't imagine we do another one in Riverwoods. It would be within a 30-minute drive of whatever home we put up. All 3 of them would be 30 minutes from one another.
And what would the size of those homes be as far as resident numbers?
We think our plan is about the same number. Really, kind of hard to say exactly because we don't have a home, we haven't designed it and all that sort of stuff, but it is, there are communities in the North Shore that allow, and Bruce highlighted a couple, that allow up to 8 by right, meaning we wouldn't have to have a public hearing. We looked at doing those, and it's just not, that's probably one of the reasons there aren't any, it's just not very economically feasible. The price of real estate and taxes and staffing, it just doesn't.
And the kind of programs.
In the kind of programs we'd like to.
You can run a home.
Yeah.
You can run a home, but in my opinion, the quality of life for the residents isn't what we want it to be.
So you're saying that quality of life for the residents is dependent about how many people are in the home?
Yeah,
It's staffing.
it's a staff, it's staffing and
Let's say not say staffing, but what is the data to support the fact that it's advantageous for there to be 12 versus 8?
I don't know that we-
There are many studies that would show that. I won't pretend that I know any studies.
Yeah,
that show that.
I don't either, but we've toured homes, we've seen homes, they're smaller homes, and they're just basic, very basic programs.
So it sounds like what you're saying is it's a financial need and not a need for for taking care of the people or for a better life of those people who are in the home more. It's more that you feel you need the financial wherewithal in order to provide certain things that you want to provide.
I think it's a combination.
It's a combination
It's a
of both.
combination of both. I mean, it's,
Okay,
Combination
so
of-
if you could somehow present at some point, probably, I don't know about, we'll vote tonight or not, or before you go to the board, if you can bring supporting documentation of why it is beneficial to those people in the home that there be 12 versus 8 or 6.
David, I would love to see a pro forma.
yeah, we have.
We have one.
We will show you.
So, because,
But I'm talking about non-financial.
No, I got it. Yeah, I'm just, we're in the senior care industry, and I read almost every study on that. I'm not aware
I'm not aware of a study
a
about.
study that just says 12 people is great, 8 is bad. I'm just not aware of that. I would.
But I will just say also, with 8, we're not going to be able to support economically 2 caregivers.
well, so I have a question about necessity, right? And reading a lot more legal briefs than I ever thought I would, particularly being relatively new to the group here. I would love to understand more about what your return on investment criteria for this particular property is, because even, just some back of envelope math, right? You're gonna be be generating about $1.2 million of revenue a year.
It's not that high, but,
Well, if it's, 13 to 8,000 a month, that math kind of adds up, even if it's $1 million.
yeah, but it's not 8,000, that's the,
Like I said, fine.
yeah.
Right.
We'll sit down with you and show you the financial model.
So I'm trying to understand the necessity for allowing people to have a group home, because there's people that want to get together and live together and live a more fruitful life. But it does not feel as if, having more than 8 is really all that financially uneconomical. It feels like it's less profit.
We'll show you.
Yeah,
We can show you.
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand your perspective, and we can show you what we have. I mean, it's,
Yes.
Okay, one more quick. You're taking in seniors who are capable of taking care of themselves, except the daily life tasks that they cannot do. But basically, they want interaction, they want communication. These are not nursing home, constant care people. Unfortunately, and I probably know it better than anybody else sitting at this table, age takes over anyway. And the person that you take in at 75 or 80, who is strong and capable of getting out and wants to talk and wants to play game cards over here, and wants to watch TV over there, and wants to go here, that person at 90 or 92 may be needing nursing home care. As we talk about an Alzheimer's patient reaching a level where they're either hostile or they're incapable. And we know that happens, just unfortunately. So those people, you're gonna have a turnover.
yes.
And there's no question that there will be a turnover. What if you've got someone who has no place to go? I mean, the parents are gone, the person is being subsidized either on money that he has put aside, and he has no kids, no grandkids. He has no place to go. You say, hey, you're out of here, and he says, heck with you, Bobby, I'm staying where I am.
So,
I mean, how do you handle the aging and the deterioration that all of us, unfortunately, are going to
yeah, that's a good question. 2 quick comments. The first one on your first part. Which you'll see, whoever's interested in seeing it, our financial model assumes about an 8 to 10% vacancy because of that turnover. There where residents are moving on to another setting, it's not appropriate anymore. So that's another reason why, if it's 12, it's really not 12 people that are living there, it's really 10 or 11, right, because of just a vacancy. In terms of people moving on in social services, we face this all the time in our home care business. Julie would be the best one to answer it. And senior buildings have this exact same thing, where people literally run out of money, their family, and for private care or in senior buildings, I'm sure in this setting we face the same thing, and Julie can talk about what kind of happens and what the process is.
If you could just add this to your comment, what are the guidelines that you currently have that you're going to use to make the decision of this person today is acceptable, but in a year this person is no longer acceptable? What are the guidelines, as you answer the question, what you do with them once they have to leave?
Sure.
What are the guidelines that you follow to ask them to leave?
Yeah. So we will have an assessment. There will be criteria in the assessment that will say we're going to accept it. We're going to accept the resident based on that criteria in the assessment. All right. We do that today in our home care company. When things change, and they do change, there will be certain criteria. I mean, truly open and honest. I would hope that in our home care company, we take people we transition people who were once very, somewhat, they still needed support with activities of daily living, but they declined. And we've taken so many families through hospice where they stay there. And because we don't want them to leave, the family doesn't want them to leave, we don't want to disrupt them. So, but the other thing that we do, if someone becomes combative, or there's behaviors that are a threat to other residents, that would be a reason we would discharge someone. But just because someone declines doesn't mean we need to discharge them.
In some cases it might, but in some cases it wouldn't. It just
It-
depends.
it's on a case-by-case.
I'm talking medical.
Yeah, if they need medical care, then they would need to move to schools. I mean, if they need medical care on an ongoing basis.
So we would have to follow the regulations of the assisted living rules and guidelines by the state, right? So there's certain medical conditions that would require us not to care for them in assisted living. And they're all written and they're all published, and we would follow those. And then we would have relationships with skilled nursing, which we already do. We have relationships with skilled nursing facilities that we would discharge. We'd also have relationships with, and we do now with Open Arms, with agencies that help us when people run out of money. So the Department of Aging has all these social services, and so at Open Arms, we have relationships with all these folks, because it's an issue we face quite often. So, and then we have relationships with the state planning attorneys that help the people qualify for Medicaid, and where they would transition into Medicaid. So, and when you're in the senior living community, you have a lot of relationships with a lot of people that can help in those scenarios, because they will happen.
So I'm thinking I heard my answer when you just said there are published guidelines that you must follow when you either bring somebody in or you discharge them. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
Could you somehow get those to us?
Yeah, for sure.
I sent it to them right now.
Pardon me?
No, we
But no, I don't need to hear it. Yeah, somebody wants to actually hear them. As long as we know that there's published guidelines
Yeah,
that you need to follow, that's.
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just so you know, they're in the assisted living and shared housing establishment act, which are
One other quick question. So the caregivers that will be providing these services in the residence, are they insured and employees, or are they independent contractors that you subcontract to?
they'll be our employees.
Yeah, it's required by the state anyways, but in our Open Arms business, all same requirements. They're all W-2, there's training requirements, there's, they get benefits, all the normal stuff.
It's bonded, insured,
Uninsured.
workers' compensation.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, can I have a show of hands of how many people would like to speak? Okay, so let's try to do it organized. We'll start in the front row on this side, if you want to speak, and then go to the second, third, fourth, fifth, and then we'll come over here to the first row and speak.
I have a couple.
We'd like you to go to the podium, please. Does that work for everybody?
I have a couple of questions. The first is really from the board and the process, that I guess 300 feet, 300 feet.
Just state your name, please.
My name is Michael Barrett, I live on.
I don't need the address, just your name. Thank you.
That's fine. I live on the south side of Julie Lane. Maybe I'm 355 feet away from this property, but I certainly didn't get noticed. And I think that the concept of 300 feet or 350 feet in this neighborhood, that would be almost my house. It is a incredibly low bar to have something like this sprung on you. I used to live in Highland Park, and the houses, the lots were a lot smaller, and there were a lot more people in the neighborhood that had to be notified. I have a couple of questions about this entity. Obviously, it's an LLC. Can be sold any day of the week, I assume, to another operator. I also would like to know, although I'm sure they're not going to share all their financing, I'd like to know how much capital they're putting into this. I mean, what percentage of this number is capital they're putting into it? thing I would want is a deserted property there that's not saleable. Or a property that's getting run down because nobody's there.
I just want to caution you all that we're allowed to make decisions based on our zoning power, based on our ability to regulate uses, and they're not asking for financial assistance from the village. We're not evaluating. The state of Illinois has a requirement that they provide evidence of feasibility to get their license, and most of the villages that deal with these kind of group homes will allow them to operate, provided they hold the state license. As I said, some of them have village licenses as well. But if you think about it, we don't require evidence of financial feasibility before we allow someone to open a restaurant or any other businesses in town. So if we were to impose, and I'm telling this, I'm mentioning this for a purpose, if we were to impose a specific requirement that in this instance, the group home has to hit a certain bar of financial feasibility, or we want to prove them as a zoning matter, probably would be discriminating against them in a way that we don't treat other businesses. So I'm mentioning that to everyone so they understand that this is not, we're not allowed to highlight them for a special treatment that we don't apply to other uses in town, other businesses. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, I get it. Other way, comment?
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the first row, second row?
No, David, please.
What?
I've spent a lot of time speaking to a lot of people and made a very detailed.
You'll get your turn.
May I?
Well, when we come around, you will absolutely have your turn. We will not leave until you have a chance to speak, I promise. Okay? And, yes, go ahead. I promise.
Hi, I'm Jody Kahn. I'm here speaking on behalf of two residences that live adjacent to the property in question. Mark and Heidi Swenson at 2250 Woodland Lane North, and Ted and Judy Roseman at 2280 Woodland Lane North. They're both out of town and they couldn't be here, so they wrote a letter and they asked me to read it on their behalf. And a lot of it has already been addressed, so I apologize that, I know it's already been talked about, but they just want to say their piece and make their opinions and opposition known. So, their opposition says, we are...
We have the intention of all the board people.
We are all 20-year residents of Riverwoods and reside at the above address.
We listen to you. Could you put that down and listen to
I'm
them?
following the letter.
Can you please not interrupt?
Oh, I'm
Have your
sorry.
turn
I
to
didn't know
speak.
he was following the letter. I thought he was reading something else.
Okay. We've received the notification that the petitioner is requesting that adjacent land be effectively rezoned for the purpose of establishing a commercial business building among and next to existing homes. We moved to Riverwoods because of its beauty and strong community values. Our homes are nestled among the trees, with our landscaping reflecting our commitment to maintain the standards and environment that are consistent with the expectations of the village and its residents. This application to turn residential property into business property is counter to what the village exemplifies and sets a dangerous precedent. Our backyards would be directly in view of the proposed structure and its business operations. The petitioner, whose owners presumably would not be living on site, proposes to have a facility that would house at least 13 people and additional caretakers. It exceeds the Riverwood zoning ordinance, and the proposed residents, who are over 55 years of age, require 24/7 care. They will not drive, but family visits are expected to be common and on a regular basis. It is also expected, as documented by Mr. Formos's letter, that there will be substantial visits by paramedics and ambulances. The applicants are indeed proposing to establish by definition a nursing home right next to all the homes adjacent to it. We understand that we all want the best for our loved ones as they age. We are cognizant of such experiences in our own families. That said, there are numerous existing local commercial facilities that offer quality care, such as assisted living, Alzheimer's facilities, and the like. And they cited 6 examples of places we all know that are nearby in other communities nearby. We don't need another one in our own backyard. We are aware that the applicant tried to sell this concept to the village of Northbrook last year. Their approach did not receive a warm reception. One of the village trustees, Robert Israel, said, quote, allowing 16 people to live together would be a tough sell in any neighborhood, unquote. Another trustee, Catherine Sisla, said, quote, 16 residents seems like a lot given the size of a single-family home, unquote. The company, Engaged Senior Homes LLC, was just incorporated in 2018 and has a zero track record. In fact, its principal office reported that the Illinois State Secretary of State appears to be zoned as a single-family residence in Libertyville. Furthermore, there's no question that there will be a significant increase in traffic and noise. Please read the letter that the resident, Mr. Gabor Formos of 2440 Duffy Lane, submitted to the Riverwoods Village Plan Commission. In his letter, he poignantly documents his real-life experience with the unfortunate health situation of our neighbor, Mr. Eichhorn, who owned the property in question before passing away late last year. I quote, they came with that big paramedic truck with the fire truck behind them with their diesel engines running and shaking our windows. Our bedroom windows are approximately 18 feet from Mr. Eichhorn's driveway. Somehow these episodes mostly happened at night, so the paramedics would sometimes come at 11 o'clock, sometimes at 3 in the morning. They would stay there for about a half an hour or so and leave. Now this is one person who needed so much. Multiply this by 13 or more people that they want to bring to this home. How many times will the paramedics have to come over there? How will that affect our lives? Unquote. The petitioner's application states that the nursing home residents will not drive or have automobiles. Yet the expectation that family members or friends, of course, will be regular visitors and will significantly increase traffic and utilize many parking spaces, as this is a business building that is adjacent to our property. Now our yards will be facing not only a nursing home, but also a parking lot with a stream of visitors. Our joy of living in Riverwoods will be diminished, as well as our property values. Again, we recognize the importance of caring for those in need. Perhaps the petitioner's model will work somewhere. However, this is not the right place for them to test it. It is not the right decision for the village to permit it. And it is our right as long-term tax-paying residents to ask the village to deny it. We respectfully do so now. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. Bruce Douglas. Are there any other healthcare professionals in the room? Good. Then some of you will, I hope, shake your head up and down as I make a few comments about my extreme disappointment in this entire presentation, especially from our attorney. Bruce, one Bruce to another, you've been our attorney as long as I've lived, and my family has lived in Riverwoods. What you said tonight was so ill-informed and inappropriate in our behalf as well as in behalf of the law. And let me explain with one single word that you do not understand. As those people who are professionals, you don't know what a disability is. You don't know. You made the most naive comment in the beginning that set the stage for a meeting in which we've had to listen to a deceptive, uninformed, and naive presentation by these people who want to come in and put a facility here which is not required by law under any disability laws that you and I are both aware of in this country. You insulted me and probably another half a dozen or more people in this room by including aging as a disability, which is nonsense. What we're told in the outline of what this property is going to be used for is that you have to be 55 years of age or over. So what? That means that most of the people in this room would qualify to live in that facility. You implied erroneously that people, and the implication was also made by the people made this presentation, that just because someone needs assistance, regardless of how ill they may be, that they qualify to live here. We don't feel, and I'm sure I'm speaking for every single person in this room, we don't feel that we want to agree to allow a phony facility, which is nothing more than an old age home, to come in and occupy the property on Duffy Lane. If you were right and you're wrong, if you were right that by law we were required to do it, then we would be taking a totally different position in responding to the things that have been said tonight. It doesn't matter how much money it costs to build a property. It doesn't matter how much capitalization there is. What matters is the people who are going to occupy those 13 places in that building, and they don't belong in this neighborhood. They do not belong here because they are not nursing home residents, which would be disabilities. These people are just, according to what we're told, are just 55 years old and they require assistance in living. I demand of this planning commission, and I've handed out this list of questions, that we have answers to every single one of these questions from these people in writing. For example, first question, how would you, ladies and gentlemen, how would you, health-wise, describe the types of residents of your proposed facility? We want to know, who are they going to be? That's more important than any of the non-human issues that we've talked about tonight. How many Medicaid patients will you have? Medicaid. Well, in my professional life, I was the only oral and maxillofacial surgeon in Lake County who treated Medicaid patients, and I treated hundreds of them in care facilities like yours and very seriously ill patients. The worst care that is given in these kinds of facilities are in little tiny ones just like you have. How many of you have thought that there's going to be 2 people without specifications here of what their qualifications are? 2 people on the premises during the day watching out for these 13 residents. 12 of whom could be seriously ill because of the fact they are aged. And at night, 1 person is going to be there. Is that person going to be asleep? Is your facility locked at night? Have you spoken to the fire department or the police department in our community? And have you received their blessings? Have you developed plans for the potential of ambulances and police cars going up and down on Duffy Lane? We don't know. But I would say, as a doctor, that if you have sufficient numbers of these older people, that there are going to be numbers of those occasions that arise. What happens if somebody has a cardiac arrest in the facility? Now, we know what would happen if there were a cardiac arrest in my home. We'd dial 911, and the wonderful ambulance and police services we have would be using the same facilities. You're not entitled to those facilities. We have paid property taxes for years. We have used those facilities. We don't need strangers like you coming in, occupying that land, using our police and ambulance services, and taking up a lot of, making a lot of noise and intruding into the quiet life that is Riverwoods, Illinois.
Mr. Douglas, excuse me.
And I'm going to leave,
Yes.
David, I'm going to leave these
I have a copy of
questions.
it, and I probably will hand it over to them, and before they make a presentation to the board, we're going to ask them to respond in writing, okay?
Could you
But
just
we're
read
trying-
some of the questions real quick without
Well,
explaining?
we're trying to give everybody a chance. I'd asked for 3 to 5 minutes, and we're already up to 8.
Am I?
I'm just trying to give everybody an opportunity to
That's
speak.
okay, you can keep going, we like what he said.
We do.
I'm speaking only for myself. Those of you who agree with the questions I'm asking, demanding answers about the people who are going to be living in the
Just read the questions,
facilities
read the
and the
questions.
impositions it would bring to our community, raise your hands.
Yes. Okay.
David, you are our representatives on the Planning Commission. You are working for us, and we expect and we demand that you listen to us, not to the naive things that our attorney said tonight. Bruce, we are not obligated to have this facility, as you said. That was a terrible statement that you made as an attorney, that the law requires that we do it because of the laws that relate to disability. These are not disabled people. They may be, but that's not a requirement for residency in this facility. This may be just a place where 13 people who have no other place to go, who are 55 years or older, want to live. And why do they have to live in a facility in our community? On the other hand, the opposite issue is those who are indeed ill, who have dementia, who are pre-Alzheimer's, those who have I am professor of health and aging at the University of Illinois School of Public Health. And I spend every day talking about what aging means. You know what? It doesn't mean anything, because you can be 50. I'm 94. Do I look like 94?
Okay, you know what?
I shouldn't qualify to be
You don't sound like you do. But thank you very much.
Enough said, but
Thank you.
I want to feel that I've spoken for a lot of you and have done this. And I ask that the questions I handed out, and there are 30 of them in this room, be answered by these people in writing, and that we see the answers before you give them permission to waive an ordinance which we feel protects us against these kinds of invaders into our community.
Okay, then. Anybody else want to speak?
Yeah, I'll just come up with. I'm not your lazy. Oh my God. Okay, what I'm going to say is something entirely different. Because it was, most of what you said was very insightful. I really enjoyed it. And this is what I want to say. The gentleman.
We need your name for the.
Oh, Darlene Lowenthal. I live right next door. And I never got any notification of anything. Just by circumstance and happenstance, accidentally, I found out about this meeting. And that's what I want to talk about. I think it's very disingenuous, because we always get things from Riverwoods. This is blooming, and there were 5 different carjackers, and so many things we get infiltrated with. Why didn't anybody here send us? You said several months it's been new about this. Why wasn't something sent to all of us? That there's going to be a meeting and we need to come down, because these people that are here, maybe a few of them got some kind of notification, but rightfully there would be 500 people here. They'd be waiting outside to be involved in this meeting. It's that important to all of us. And I think it was terrible that nobody got notified. Now, the first gentleman came up and he mentioned something about 300 yards, feet, what did he say? I just found this out, I did not know about it. In plain words, legally, I was told that they only had to let people know about this meeting who lived 500, 300 feet, what was it, feet, yards, what is it? Feet, 300 feet away, can you imagine? Can you imagine? So they went by the law, you know. Why should that be allowed? Other people are paying taxes, they live here. All of, this has to do with Riverwoods, period. Everybody who lives in Riverwoods should have been notified. And there should have been a meeting here that was overwhelming with people who lived here. Not people who were 300 yards or 500 yards away. It's very disingenuous and it's terrible. And I think everything this gentleman said that was here last was absolutely amazing and completely true. Because I just don't understand it. Because let's get real. The bottom line of these people moving in is money. That's why they're coming in. For no other reason. And let me ask you something else. I was told that this woman lives in Deerfield, and he lives in Libertyville, and I'd like to know, how many houses did you look at in Deerfield, it's right next door, or Libertyville, to also put this, what is it called? You looked at multiple homes in Deerfield.
Yes.
And then I'd like to ask the attorney, who you had mentioned 40 years ago, you quoted something that happened of why it was accepted and it happened and it was allowed to be built or whatever. I'd like to know how many were rejected? How many people do exactly what these people do? And how many were rejected where they weren't allowed to put a facility in that particular neighborhood? And what was the reason they weren't allowed to put the facility in that neighborhood? We're not getting answers.
I will try and provide a few answers now, if it's okay.
I'm sorry, what?
If you'd like me to try and provide a few answers, I'd like to, right now.
Yeah, well, sure.
Okay. You might want to write this down. This is 42 U.S. Code, Section 12102. This is the definition of disability in the federal statutes.
That's
Now,
not what I'm asking.
I understand, but first of all, when you say that I don't know what disability means, it may be that we're looking at it differently. One is a physician and one is a doctor, is a lawyer. The only definition I can use is the one that the law tells me to use. And disability means a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities of an individual. And an individual is regarded, for the purposes of this paragraph, major life activities include but are not limited to caring for oneself, performing manual tasks, seeing, hearing, eating, sleeping, walking, standing, lifting, bending, speaking, breathing, learning, reading, concentrating, thinking, communicating, and working. It's the federal law. So,
That's not what I asked. I asked, how many do you know?
I'm just answering one question
No.
at a time. Consider the sequence. Now, as to your questions, my view on this is that the courts have held many times that our ability as a village to exercise zoning power, remember, we're not supposed to be omnipotent. We can't just say no or yes on a whim. We have to exercise our power within responsible limits, but we're no better than the dictator. So our ability to exercise zoning power means we have to use it to regulate certain things that we're allowed to regulate for. Noise, traffic, congestion, even the quality of a single-family neighborhood, as I said, is something we're allowed to try and facilitate. But at the same time, when the federal government says, no, you can't use those powers in a way to deny people with disabilities the right to access housing, you can't use your zoning power that far. So when you ask me, what are they allowed and not allowed to do?
No, I didn't say what they allowed and didn't allow. I would like to know how many of these people were rejected, they weren't allowed to do it, and what was the reason they were
When you say
rejected?
these people, can you be more
The
specific?
people who wanted to open up these senior homes, right?
Why is that relevant to our?
I think it's very relevant. You told me, you're trying to imply that it's okay, there's certain zones, and 40 years ago they got in. I want to know how many didn't get in. How many were rejected to live in a certain place? And I'd like to know the reason why.
There are court cases that have denied
Yes.
group homes in certain areas because they felt that the exercise of zoning power was responsibly exercised. One example, for example, that I can think of is a community had zoned nursing homes and larger facilities for business districts but not residential districts. In certain contexts, that kind of steering of zoning is okay, but not in all. The difficulty with group homes is that the whole theory of it, the whole philosophy of it is that it's allowing people to access a residential setting. And if you don't allow people who need to live in a group home to be able to be in a residential setting, to be in your community under some scenario, you're likely engaged in some form of discrimination.
That is discrimination. I don't think it's anything to do with discrimination. So let me ask you, why are we here? The decision is going to be made by 10 or 12 people. So if we take votes of everybody who lives in Riverwoods, and by the way, it would be nice if people could send something out, we can have another meeting and send to every single house the date and the date of the meeting. It's that important. So if there were 500 people here, who knows how many live in Riverwoods, right? So even if 499 people vote, we don't want this here, it's not going to make a difference, is it? Because it's going to be made up by all you people, the ones who are going to decide whether it comes or whether it doesn't. So why are we here?
It's my specific advice to the Planning Commission and to the village board that they exercise their power in accordance with law, not on the basis of popular opinion. This is not a referendum. And there have been a number of communities that have been held to task because they voted in a way that the most number of people in the audience were saying that had nothing to do with the standards that they were supposed to follow under law. We have to follow the standards of the law. We're not being true to ourselves.
So if you're going to follow the law, are you telling me that this is going to be allowed? Is that what you're saying? Because you're kind of bending towards it now.
No,
What does it mean?
What I said at the outset is that the legal standard requires that we consider and allow a group home of a certain extent. I didn't think that it would be possible to say no group home can be in a single-family district in Riverwoods. I don't think that's possible. I think what's before the